contrary to religious belief, Halloween is more about the personification of the divine feminine that we know of as Jesus than we think. Because when you take the words Halloween and you break it down phonetically, you get two different meanings. Now, when we think of something being hollow, we think of it as being the opposite of dense. So when your cells, when you vibrate into the physical dimension, your cells are what become dense. That is what allows you to materialize your consciousness into physical matter and have this experience. Now, this is what we know of as low vibration. But the reason why we think of things in terms of hierarchy not only is because of the patriarchy, but because we have become densified by way of our consciousness in order for us to project ourselves into the third dimension is through this interdimensional split. Now, this split in our consciousness is what created the 3D to 5D shift, or the split, the heaven and hell, which is how it is described in religion. Now, the reason this also supports the reason for us thinking of things as being good or bad, light or dark, or righteous and evil. So when it comes to Halloween, there are two forms of this density. So at the end of the year, you can think of this as being a time of reflection. It is the time that we tend to return to the source, which is the internal or the unseen aspect of ourselves. So the darkness that we get towards the end of the year, because the sun sets earlier, is symbolic because it's like a hibernation period or a rebirth, which is what happens during the Christmas season and the winter solstice. But that's another video. Now, when it comes to this densification of our consciousness, when something is dense, we are not able to receive divine light codes or information. Even if we can receive those light codes and information, it can't be properly transmitted, because since we live in this split reality, we exist in a realm where duality is a validation. It's a principle of our existence. So when your cells are dense, making you incapable of transmitting this information, that is because the density of your cells, or the low vibration, equates to a dilution in your neuromelanin, and the neuromelanin is necessary to transmit this information. On the flip side, the reason why we think of Halloween as being evil is because when your cells are dense and your neuromelanin is diluted, then you actually become what I call the epitome of the narcissist, because we know that the narc is the narcotic. It is also the numbing effect, or the deep sleep. So you are spiritually disconnected from the source, which is your divine femininity. These beings feed off of light-based beings, and the way that you become the light-based beings is when you increase or transcend your frequency, which increases the vibration of your cells, and it reverses the density. So when your cells are reversed, then the flip side of that, the other end of that spectrum, is that your neuromelanin becomes more dense. It becomes denser. The denser your melanin is, the higher the quality information you are able to transmit. And this is key to your soul activation. This is how you break the narcissistic spell of the patriarchy. Now, when we think of Jesus as walking on water, Jesus was what we would consider the hollow force, because when your cells become hollow and your neuromelanin is dense, that means that you have reached a level of Christ consciousness that allows you to float above your environment. Floating above your environment is symbolic to him walking on the water. Now, what does this have to do with the end of the year and Halloween? Because hollow is the example of what I just gave as far as your density and your vibration as it relates to you receiving and transcribing information. But the een, which is also the eve, because it wasn't always Halloween, it was at one point Hallow's Eve, is symbolic to the darkness, which is the divine feminine, or the unseen realm where you reconnect to your spirit. This is where you get to talking about shadow work and the rebirth and other forms of transformation. So not only does this happen in a spiritual sense, but physically, Halloween represents a point in time during the year where the veil becomes thinned. When that veil becomes thin, then it serves as a portal that allows different types of entities in. Now, the types of entities that come through, you have the ability to control how they get put to use. That's because you have the density in your melanin, your neuromelanin, that allows you to transcend your consciousness beyond the third dimension. When your melanin is diluted, so your cells are dense, so physically you vibrate low, which is what anchors you to the material realm. You are looking for a alternative life force because you have been disconnected from it. So that is why we think of Halloween as being evil, because these individuals they take advantage of this portal by calling on these dense like entities that serve whatever their needs, as long as they find light-based beings in order to feed. So where religious comes in is religious gives us a perspective of Halloween that is fear-mongering, because fear through epigenetics is what densifies your cells and dilutes your neuromelanin. So Halloween is actually is meant to be a time of reflection, a time where you focus on transcending your consciousness and making that soul connection. Because the spring, which is the true new year, is when you make your rebirth like a butterfly. This is the time where you go into your cocoon and you hibernate until it's time for you to be born again, which is how Christ is defined in religion. So Halloween isn't a time to be scary or afraid. Halloween is a time where you are supposed to be focused on your self-mastery. But the evils of Halloween, as it is projected onto us, is meant to distract us from that internal work. So the costumes is the mask that you wear because you don't have a level of self-awareness in order to control the forces that come into this realm that are looking for hosts or looking for ways to express themselves. Now remember, the physical world is mirrored by the spiritual dimension. So these entities that are crossing over these portals or use Halloween as a portal are at your discretion, because you are the God of your universe, and everything that projects outside of you is a reflection of what's going on within. It's a reflection of what's needed in order to properly express your soul. Now, if you enjoyed this take and you want to hear more on metaphysics, then drop a comment and tell me what you think about this. And make sure you like and follow me for more on metaphysics and transformation and how to break the spell of the narcissistic realm.